Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, a Haggerty10 Twitter handle, and I'm joined by Alison McConnell, at Ali Bally 76 on the Twitter handle. Morning, Alison. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. You?
Good. We were all just saying how things were going smoothly, running like clockwork this January window, and then overnight, the spanner gets flung into the works. The Riley McGree deal seems to have hit a snag, and he could end up signing for Middlesbrough. Ali, reports are that Middlesbrough offered $2 million more than Celtic, and are offering something like 14 grand a week. It just came out of the blue. A bit of a surprise, that one, because it seemed to be a done deal earlier on this week.
Yeah, I think that's the danger with all these kind of things. It's never done until the paperwork is signed and through. I think there's always a risk of that. It's never watertight until all the contractual things are fulfilled. I think it would be disappointing for Celtic to lose them at this stage when they were so close to getting them. But I think the reality is that money talks. I think if the finance is quoted today, and I have no reason to think they're anything other than correct, then I think Celtic would be a bit off what he can get elsewhere. And that's just the reality of football life. I think if people can offer significantly more finances, then the likelihood is that that's where the player is going to go. And I think that's just the hard and fast facts with which we deal with. The one aspect, as we just discussed a minute ago, the one aspect may be the manager speaking to him himself, like just offering a pathway, maybe an indication of how he wants to play and where he fits in a team. But I think ultimately in these situations, it does come down to finances.
And the thing is, Alison, he was supposedly coming because Ange had intervened. Might take another Ange intervention if Celtic want to do that, or if Ange wants to do that. But from what we believe, Celtic don't particularly want to get into any kind of tug of war over this. They've made their pitch, they've made their offer. If it's not good enough or the player doesn't want to come, it looks like they might just move on.
I think it comes down to what your own valuation of the player is, where you see him fitting in, where you think he could potentially move to, and sticking to your own budget rather than being drawn into a competition with other clubs. I think if Celtic have set their fee at a particular amount and salary at a particular amount, it's unlikely that they'll waver hugely, especially when there is such disparity. When you see the figures quoted today, I think it would be remiss almost to get into a kind of bidding war when you get to that stage.
Yeah. Some comments coming in, Alison. Tim on regular contributor. Hi Tim, how you doing? If McGree has to think about coming or has to be cajoled into it, pull out the deal and look elsewhere. Seems to be a common thread this. Never seen us paying $3 million for him, to be honest. Frank Brennan, regular contributor. Hi Frank, how you doing? Riley, who at the end of the day, he'll go and he's not the finished article. I'm sure Ange could pick someone else cheaper. So I think a lot of people are saying move on. Alison, McCune and others say shame, but if he thinks Bud's better than us, then we've had a lucky escape.
Yeah, I think what you would say too is that this has been a very positive window for Celtic so far. They're not desperate for players. They're not in a position where you're going into the last few days of a window and you desperately need reinforcements and you find yourself in some ways over a barrel. Celtic have had a productive window. They've been able to identify targets. They've been able to enhance the first team squad. They'll come out of the window stronger than when they went into it. It's a very different scenario had they maybe lost out on a number of other targets and desperately needed some reinforcements. It's not that scenario at the minute. So I think there is a comfort in what they already have there. I think there'll be an assurance just now that the depth and the way that the manager has been allowed to rebuild, it is taking on that focus. And there will be situations like this. You won't hear of all of them, but this does happen in a window where deals are very close to the line and then finances change when someone else comes in. This is the reality of windows when they're open, that ultimately it just comes down to hard and fast money. It comes down to who's paying what, salaries, add-ons, bonuses. The minutiae of these contractual details can be significant in terms of what they offer the player, and 9 times out of 10 that's what wins, not the stature of the club and not maybe the opportunity to play with individuals or work under particular managers. I think it can be quite unusual for players to opt for that over finances, and I think that's just the reality of it.
I agree with you as well, wholeheartedly, that there is not a desperation for Celtic to go and chase this, that there maybe has been in the past with other players, or to be seen to be doing something or actively seeking to bring in players. Celtic are well stocked in the midfield area, aren't they? And this was somebody who was coming in, who was a largely unknown quantity, but known to Ange. So again, you were trusting the manager's judgment on that one, weren't you, really?
Yeah, it comes down to what we spoke about at the beginning of the week. I think at the minute there is a very clear sign that it's a manager who's identifying players. I think that has come out loud and clear, certainly over this window and in the latter part of the summer window too. So I think I don't think there's any doubt about that. And this happens. It happens all the time. There will be other players in this window that we've not known about, or whose name has not come to the forefront. It's not been made public knowledge, but this is life at football clubs. You maybe have a dozen people on your list that you would like to go to. You maybe have order of priority for positions, and when you don't get one, you move on to another. But I would agree with you. I think in the midfield area, there is a bit of depth with the players who have come in so far. I did feel in the opening half of the season that there was maybe an over-reliance on that favoured three of McGregor, Rogic and Turnbull. And I think you could see towards the end when you're picking up injuries and niggly injuries and Turnbull picking up an injury that, you know, sometimes when you're overplaying players that this can happen. So I did think there was a need for some depth there. I know Near Beaton has a versatility and he's been able to come in and do a job there. But I did think that there was a need for other players. But I think the Japanese lads who have come in now offer a versatility in those areas too.
Ewan Boy Martin makes a good point here as well. Andrew's also said that he only wants players who want to be here, so it's no off who doesn't want to come. That's fair enough. Seems to be. And then Frank Brennan comes back in and says the English Championship a very poor quality league, but like it or not, these clubs in it have far more money than we have. And if he's chasing pound notes before anything else, that's his choice. That's exactly the point you were making, Alison, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, money does talk. Look at Joe Hart. He came here because he wanted to be here and he took a massive pay cut. And he's been brilliant for Celtic. We don't want players who care about money first. And David Gillespie says it'd be a shame if he chose money over everything else playing for Celtic offers, but it'll be his loss in the long run. And Simon Thomas, at the end of the day, there's always another target to fill the void. And that's what we're talking about here, as you say. There'll be other players on lists that Ange will have identified. It's not the be-all and end-all. It's not the end of the world, but it was just there was a feel-good factor, wasn't it? And everything seemed to be going smoothly. So you're always going to have bumps in the road, aren't you, Alison, in these kind of things, especially in a transfer window?
Yeah, I think it's just how the window works. I think you're not going to come up trumps with every player that you identify and wish to bring in. I think the frustration will be how close it seemed to be. I think Celtic maybe feel as though it was just on the line. It was just almost there. So I think there is a frustration to that element of it. But I would agree. I think they will move on fairly swiftly. If it doesn't come to fruition and it is the end of it, then I'm sure they'll move on quite rapidly.
Speaking of positive news, Alison, fans are allowed back in the stadiums. Yay! And with full house on Monday night for Celtic Hibernian. Common sense and a victory for those clubs as well who voted to bring the winter break forward. It kind of made sense at the time, and it makes all the more sense now that the government is saying you can all get back in as long as you provide evidence of that you have been boosted and a negative lateral flow test. It's what we all want, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think we've spoken at it at length, not just in the last few weeks, but over last year and during the lockdowns. It is a completely different experience playing a game of football in an empty stadium as it is with a full quota of fans in there. I think people will be thrilled that it's only been a few weeks without football, because I think the fear was it might have elongated, just given the numbers that are still evident at the minute. So I think it's a welcome move. I think the decision made yesterday now frames the decision made in December as a very sensible one. I think I do think it was a calculated gamble. I think you were trying to envisage if a circuit breaker really would aid the return of fans, and it has. And I think it's to be applauded. It was a common sense decision at the time. And I think it's not done any real damage. I think what it will do is create a fairly fraught next few months. It'll be busy when the league resumes next week. It'll be pretty full on for all clubs, just trying to get all the games and all the fixtures played. But I think having fans back is to be applauded. I think it's what everyone wants. I'm sure players, it must be fairly grim for them running out, and I think it definitely takes a bit of tension out of the game when you don't have that energy within the stadium. I think particularly for big clubs like Celtic, where you're feeding off the energy within the stadium, and I think it can enhance the level of performance. I don't think there's any question about it, and I think there'll be an element of relief on all fronts. There'll be a relief from the club, relief from players, relief from supporters, that there's a bit of normality coming back, and that the games are played as they should be.
You used a word last week to describe it, and it's a word that the journalists who have been fortunate to get in to cover games during the pandemic, soulless. And it has been absolutely soulless, hasn't it? When you've watched a game and reported on it in an empty stadium, there is no other word for it. There's no better description for it. And thankfully, common sense has won the day here.
Yeah, it kind of took me back to my days as a very young reporter, like going and covering reserve games, maybe, or covering games that would be 3 men and a dog at. And it's just a different experience. It's a very odd experience, I think, for players. It must feel like a training game. I'm sure of it. I think it just lacks something. It detracts hugely from the game. And I'm thinking on Boxing Day, I was at Tynecastle for work. Again, the game between Hearts and Ross County, and half time Hearts should be out of sight, and then in the second half Ross County come back, and you're thinking if there were fans within that stadium, it would have been a completely different game because of the kind of seesaw nature of it and the energy that you get off the crowd. It would have been an entirely different 90 minutes to sit and spectate and observe than what it was with no one in the ground. And I think you need it. I think if it's possible and if it's safe to do so, and this seems like a common sense way, show your vaccine, prove that you're as safe as you can be, take your lateral flow test, and let's get back to some kind of normality.
And enjoy it, Alison. Enjoy the football when you get back in. Now, here's a comment from Frank that you'll really like, Alison. You're still very young, Alison. Yeah,
tenner in the post.
Yes, I was going to say the money's in the post. Is that part of the McGree deal, is it? The Steve Brown envelope? Slip to thank for that comment there. Now, speaking of deals, there's also all sorts of speculation that the Jota deal's done. I guess McGree tells you that until, as you said before, that all the contractual minutiae has been sorted out and nailed down, then there's still doubts over that one too, isn't there, Alison? Despite it's been done.
If the Jota deal was done, Celtic would be singing about it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
This is a hugely positive move. It would be, it would be incredibly popular among the club support. Have been desperate to tie him down. I think you can be assured that the ink won't be dry on that contract, but you will hear about it, you will know about it, and until that time, then I think you should just exercise a little bit of caution.
Yeah, I think you exercise caution in all of those deals. Despite having options to buy and all that else, and the truth will out and it'll all come out in the wash, as they say, won't it? But it's just nice to look forward to a Celtic Hibs game on Monday where there will be a full house. It'll be a good game. Sean Maloney returning to Celtic Park as a manager in his own right, and the new Japanese players coming in, see how many of them make the starting lineup. There's a lot of little subplots there, Alison, and just something brilliant to look forward to, isn't it?
I'm sure people will be desperate to get back. It's been 3 weeks without games, and people will just be itching to get back. And you're right, fans love the opportunity to go and see some new players. I think the fact that Kyogo made such a compelling impact and such an immediate impact would encourage a school of thought that there might be a similar impactful debut coming from any of the guys who might play. I saw that Celtic released a few clips yesterday from training that that people were purring over. They were quite keen at what the guys had to offer. So I'm sure they'll be desperate to come and get a glimpse of these. And I think too, players as well, I think they needed the break. I think you could see through December, they looked leggy at times. And I'm not only talking about Celtic, I thought all players did. I think you get to that stage of the season and the volume of games that there's been and people carrying knocks and bumps or maybe playing through certain things. I think you could see that they needed the break, and maybe mentally as much as physically. And I'm sure it'll be a refreshed squad that comes back out. And Celtic are in a very different place now than where they were 12 months ago. If you remember, they came off the back of the very ill-fated trip to Dubai and walked into a game against Hibs minus, was it 13 or 17 first-team players and went out and drew the game, and all of a sudden, things truly unravelled, and the season really did start to fall apart. So they're in a very, very different place now. They're in quite a solid footing. I think fans will be encouraged by the business that's taken place so far in the window, and they'll be desperate to get along, get a look at the team, get a look at how these guys fit in, and they'll be wanting Celtic to hit the ground running and just keep up performances and keep up any kind of pressure on Rangers.
After that spiel, Alison, all I want to say is it Monday yet? Is it Monday yet? Is it Monday yet? I think I won't be alone in thinking like that. Well, I think that's a good way to end today's briefing. We will see what happens with the McGree deal. Maybe something more on that today. But with fans allowed back into the stadium, we are now counting the seconds and days to Monday. Alison, always enjoy your contribution. Thanks for your comments, guys. Try and read as many of them as we can. And just before we go, if you wish to subscribe, you will get, as you can see the strap line along the bottom, a free month. If you hit the subscribe button, you'll get access to top quality journalistic content. You might even see some of myself and Alison stuff there as well, Alison. But thank you. Have a brilliant day, guys, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you.